Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. Allison Skalberg here with Consolidated Planning Group, and we are discussing the topic of Houston school options today. So for those of you that are joining us for the first time, thank you for being here. We're glad you're here. For our regular attenders to our webinars, thanks for coming back. A couple housekeeping items right off the bat. Today's webinar is being recorded. Our contact information is in the chat box for all of the presenters today. So the event is being recorded. After today's meeting, you are going to get an email with the slides of what was presented. So again, you don't have to take notes on every single thing. You are going to get these slides and have those in your possession. We are in webinar mode today, so we cannot see you or hear you. So you're safe there. But we do know you're here, and we do want to hear your questions, and we want you to put your questions in the chat box. I'm going to be monitoring the chat box today, and I'll read out those questions, and we'll get to just as many questions as we can. We're going from 12 to 1 today. We will be done by 1 o'clock, so if you're planning your lunch hour that way, you can plan accordingly. Consolidated Planning Group, we're a holistic special needs planning firm. We do webinars on a pretty regular basis as it relates to topics for planning for special needs on a wide variety of topics, all related to your loved ones with a disability. And so all of our webinars live on our YouTube channel. There's a Consolidated Planning Group YouTube channel that you can subscribe to for free, and you can kind of peruse the webinars that are out there from the past. There's I don't even know how many is out there anymore. There's over 100 out there on all topics related to special needs, and you can kind of pick and choose where you might be on your journey and what might be the best fit. So I am excited to have with you today from Houston School Options, Judy Blumberg, not Bloomberg. So I always try to get these names right. We've got Judy Blumberg and we have Dede Halpin. They're going to be talking to us today about some of the options out there, a little bit more about their company. And what I know for sure is I'm glad to have you here. So, you know, we hear from families all the time, and this is a pressing issue. We have kids that have learning differences. We have kids that have behavioral issues or so many different things going on. I mean, they could be physical, all kinds. It is a pressing issue from the time they start preschool all the way through, into adulthood. And sometimes I kind of refer to this relentless pursuit of information. As a parent myself, parent to 4, 2 with special needs, I find myself on a relentless pursuit for information, for better, for improvement. How can we take it to the next level? How can we give our kids the tools that they need to be as successful as they can be? And so I'm personally really glad that you guys are here, and what you guys are going to talk to us about. But kind of in short, it's my understanding that you guys basically have a consulting firm, right? So some families, you can be a DIY if you want, the do-it-yourselfer, and you kind of figure all these things out. But you guys are a professional service in the greater Houston area, and you partner with families in helping them find the right fit for their students. Did I summarize that okay?
That sounds great. That's exactly what we do.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, let me just turn everything over to you. Thank you so much for being here today, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Allison, for having us, for the introduction, and for all you're doing. And we want to give a thank you to Meredith Haynes for reaching out to us to make this presentation possible for all of you. As mentioned, we are Julie Blumberg and Dede Halpin, and we are the owners and educational consultants at Houston School Options. We think of ourselves as educational matchmakers. We take you through some rounds of speed dating. We stick with you as things get more serious, and ultimately we help you settle on the right match. In today's presentation, we're going to talk to you and take you through not only our process, but some of the things you may want to think about as you assess your child's current school situation or when you are searching for a new school.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dede Halpin. Right after graduating from the University of Texas at Austin in 1975, and don't do the math, please, I began my teaching career in special education resource classrooms in Spring Branch ISD and in Richardson ISD. While I was in the Dallas area, I completed my master's degree in special education and received on-the-job training in doing comprehensive psychoeducational evaluations. When my husband and I returned to Houston, I completed my certification as an educational diagnostician at the University of Houston, Clear Lake. After another year of teaching in Alief ISD, I began serving as a diagnostician in several elementary and middle schools. And after the birth of our second child, I opened a private practice, doing testing and making recommendations about school placement and programming for the students that I tested. When the school consulting side of my practice grew, I established Houston School Options. Much of my practice at that time was helping families relocating to Houston from countries all over the world. But there were also many local families who needed help finding the right school to meet their child's learning needs. About 6 years ago, after the arrival of our two precious grandchildren out in California, I was joined by Julie Blumberg. She's been a tremendous asset to me, not only when I'm out visiting on the West Coast, but also working side by side with me, adding her perspective as a young mom and to my own long history of experience in this field. Together, we can offer a unique hybrid of expertise to every client family. So now I'd like to let Julie tell you more about herself. Next slide.
So as Dede mentioned, I joined her at Houston School Options about 6 years ago. I began my teacher training at the University of Arizona, where I earned a Bachelor of Arts in Elementary Education. Before I joined Dede, I was a second grade and fifth grade teacher, and then I began a private tutoring business. During my time as a private tutor, I realized some of my students were struggling more than they should be, more than normal in their current schools, and that there had to be an alternative that could serve them better. I conducted a couple of school searches with those families on my own, and then I was reconnected with Dede, whom I knew previously, where I learned that there was a whole world of educational consulting out there. I am currently going through the school search process myself with my own rising kindergartner. And even as a professional, I'm overwhelmed by so many options and really just trying to make the right choice for her. So this experience is really giving me an even better perspective on the challenges other families are facing when they seek our help searching for schools. For parents who are not native to Houston or to Texas or to even the United States, those who are not educators, those who may be struggling with new information about their child's learning needs or their child's changing needs, I am particularly motivated to ease the school search process for them. So I've had the honor of learning so much from Dede about the process, and I'm really grateful to be able to be on the journey of helping so many families with her. If you'll go to the next slide, please. So as you've heard, Dede and I together have a combined 50 years of history as education professionals. We've assisted families from right in our own neighborhoods. We have helped families moving from other cities in Texas, from other states, and families moving from as far away as Amsterdam, Trinidad and Tobago, Nigeria, Melbourne, and Beijing, just to name a few. We have been successful in finding the right school for our clients all over the Houston area, as well as in Austin. We've helped families search in Dallas and even as far as the greater Phoenix area. So next, we're going to show a quick video just to show you exactly what an educational consultant does and where we can be helpful. Next slide. the volume. Let's see.
Next slide. Families seek our help for a variety of problems they face when searching for the right school. Some of them don't even know where to start. The greater Houston area, like many metroplexes, is so large. When families move here, they're faced with having to narrow the area of town they want to live. That's often driven by where they work or what their tolerance for commute times will be. We have more than 24 public school districts. The largest, of course, is HISD, the Houston Independent School District, which alone has close to 300 schools. There are also more than 300 private schools in the Houston area, each serving their own niche of families and learners. It can be very overwhelming to anyone trying to zero in on the right school for an individual child. But it's especially difficult for those moving here from other cities, states, and countries. A second problem that sends some families to us for assistance is when they find that the child's current school placement isn't continuing to work. That could be as simple as the school only offering classes through kindergarten or 5th or 8th grades. But often it's when the school is just not meeting the child's needs and it becomes clear that a change is necessary. As parents and professionals, we know that having your child in the wrong school causes distress for everyone involved, and most importantly, for the child. We're lucky that there are so many options in our area. So we encourage families to make that change whenever it becomes obvious that things are not working. Change itself can be scary and stressful, but there's no greater feeling than knowing your child is in the right place, the right program, and the right school. And a third reason some parents seek our help is when trying to navigate the school choice options that so many school districts offer. Sometimes the zoned public school just isn't a good option, but there may be another school with a program that more closely fits your child's needs and interests. Not every public school has the full array of special education services. So a change of school may be the only way to access some services that your child may require. It can be a confusing system and sometimes less transparent than we'd hope. So we can help sort through it and assist parents in identifying what other public school options might be better than the homeschool. Next slide.
Dede, I have a question because it actually came up in one of our webinars earlier this week. Two questions. First, the first question is it ever okay if things are going really poorly? Do you ever suggest switching kids mid-year or waiting for the school year to be over? That's the first question. I'll let you answer and I'll ask the second one.
We absolutely do, because, when we're working with families who move here, they move all during the school year, and we always find a school. So, there's no reason at all not to do the search. You may find that the right school, and it may not be available right at that moment, but at least you know what the next step will be when a spot does become available. So I think as soon as parents are feeling, and it's a gut feeling, and we always tell families to pay attention to that, that when it's not going well, it's time to make a move, or at least seek out if there's somewhere better.
Sure. So the next question that I have is the one that popped up earlier this week, is about school choice. Someone asked this week, did school choice pass, or was it tabled, or what is happening with that bill or with that law? What is the deal with that? Explain what school choice is and if it applies to us.
Most of the school districts in the Houston area offer some kind of school choice. It's not just so simple as, I don't like my school, I want to go to this school, and you just go there. But there is a process for making a different choice, especially if a school has a program your zone school doesn't have. Even if the schools are the same, if there's space in the preferred school, most school districts have some kind of transfer option. There's just a process to go through. Of course, the reality is that the really sought after schools are the ones that stay pretty full. And especially in elementary school, that becomes an issue because there are class size restrictions. So, if a school is really at capacity for their building or for that capacity that's set by the state, then, there may not be a space for a child at that preferred school. But when there's usually an option to make that move.
So how do I find out if I am in a school that has school choice, or is it by county? It's not a state law. Like, how do I find this out if I want to do a little investigation myself?
So you're going to have to search just within your school district. Most school districts are no longer, there used to be a system where some school districts would take children from out of district, but that doesn't really work much anymore. So, as you just go to, you can search within your school district's website for the school choice office. And that will tell you what all the choices are, what the process is. And we know can be pretty daunting. We're happy to facilitate people through that process, but there's the information all over the web about school choice within each school district's website.
And one last question regarding school choice. Are there school choices that are actually private school options as opposed to public school options, or are they all in the public sector?
That is a more extensive process if people are looking for placement in a private school at public expense. So there is a process to do that. It definitely helps to have some kind of special ed consultant or even an advocate to help, because school districts are they're a little reticent to send children outside of their own system, but it can happen. That process takes a little longer than just making a choice within the school system.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, those were great questions, and some we are asked very frequently. So we want to talk a little bit about how we provide solutions. We think it's really important to note that each search process is different for each child. So there are often circumstances even where a school might not be the right place for every child in a family. So siblings might need to be at a different school. We help parents understand and identify which kinds of schools fit their families and their child's needs. It's often easy to listen to birthday party talk or parking lot talk or the neighbor down the street, but what works for their kid might not be the right place for your kid. So we really do try to start with a large list of options and possibilities. And through our process, we help you narrow it down. So like I said in the beginning, we refer to ourselves as educational matchmakers. So therefore, we set families up with a speed dating round where we introduce them to a rather thorough and non-exhaustive list of schools to explore. And then we help them move on to some first dates when families visit and tour the schools and that seem at first glance to be a good fit for their child. As things get more serious in the process and the list of schools gets narrowed down to a workable number that the families actually want to apply to, we are there every step of the way to counsel and guide families through the process of finding the right match, the right school. So we always say it's our goal to find you the right school for right now. So given everything we know about the child, your family, your child's current learning needs. But we also understand that things can change. So school leadership changes. The makeup of the student body of the school can change. Children can outgrow some of their previous learning obstacles, or they can develop new issues that require being addressed at school. So family circumstances can change, like financial status, job locations, a change in family structure. And if they do, we are also there to help families adjust and make school changes when necessary too. So that's kind of relating to your question, Allison, of, should you stick it out? If some reason, whatever it may be, there is absolutely no reason that any child should be suffering in their current environment. And like Dede said, even if just doing the search makes you either feel better about where they are or have a plan for the future, that can be really, really helpful.
You mentioned earlier, and it is a big thing, the traveling, the distance to the school and how far it is, and the convenience to the home and or work or things like that. And clearly the name of your business is Houston School Options, but I just wanted to verify, do you guys work with the greater Houston area, such as Fort Bend? We've got Harris County, Galveston County, just the surrounding area. Is it the whole area that you can encompass? So if somebody is as far out as Fort Bend or Brazoria or something like that, you can help them kind of figure out some of those options.
Absolutely. And as I think we mentioned before, we also have worked with families in Dallas and Austin and San Antonio. Even as far as Phoenix, we like to keep it where we can always go to a school if need be. With the pandemic, things have become really virtual as is anyways. So we've seen kind of a shift in that over the last couple of years. And we're hoping it actually goes back to going back into the schools because we really enjoy that. But yes, we work with families, Fort Bend, Katy, Woodlands, Cy-Fair, all over, especially, a lot of our relocating families, they are not just in, the huge Houston metropolitan, they are out every which way. And yeah, we can also help with, if distance is an issue and families, there's ways to find school services to get students to school, busing services, or, we often recommend carpooling. There's different connecting families with families in their neighborhoods that may be making the same trek as them. So yes, we are all over the map of Houston.
Great to know, because I think that definitely matters. Our commutes matter for sure.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so we've mentioned some of these already, but we wanted to take a few minutes to talk about the many different types of schools that Houston and most other large city areas offer. Every home is zoned to a home elementary, middle, and high school, although some districts subdivide these or use different names, like in intermediate schools or junior high schools or ninth grade centers. In fact, anywhere you put your head down to sleep is an address that's zoned to a particular school. So long-term stay hotels, corporate apartments, other temporary housing addresses are within a school zone boundary. That zoned public school is a safety net where almost without exception, any child living within its boundaries can attend the school. But many school districts, and HISD in particular, also offer magnet schools that focus on a particular interest or skill. Students who qualify may be offered spots in schools that offer foreign language, fine arts, STEM programs, and others that are not offered in most public schools. And some schools have specific special education programs like self-contained classes, life skills programs, and others that are specific to a certain population of students. If your homeschool doesn't offer a program that you feel meets your child's needs, there's a system for choosing that school over your zoned school, but always in the context of availability of space in the preferred school. We're also lucky that Houston has an incredibly diverse population with families whose origins are in just about every country on the planet, who speak many different languages and practice many different religions. We have many private schools, in fact, the majority of our private schools that are faith-based. Some are directly affiliated with a place of worship. Others are part of our faith-based citywide communities. If you're seeking a religious education for your child, Houston has quite a lot to offer. When it comes to secular private schools, there are many different kinds to consider. Some of our schools carry national reputations for academic rigor, and some are small and not as well known, but can be just the right place for an individual learner. Houston has a good number of Montessori schools, some with accreditation and some who utilize the philosophy of Montessori without seeking affiliation. We have private preschools, elementary, middle, and high schools, and we have some schools that range all the way from infant years through the high school years. We have some schools that are geared towards gifted and talented students as well. The other thing that Houston can pride ourselves on is the large number of schools that focus on special needs populations, from schools that are disability specific to some that are dedicated to developing an individual program for a variety of learning needs. Some of these schools offer therapies within the school setting that can enhance the academic program and can be a huge help to families who might be spending a lot of time, effort, and money taking children to and from therapies after school. And some schools offer time and space for outside therapists to come in during school hours to serve their students. Again, our focus at Houston School Options is assisting parents in sorting through all of these options to identify the right school for their child. We attempt to take what could be a long and tedious process and take some of the stress out of the school search. Next slide.
So we want to give you a few did you know thoughts to think about. And then we're going to follow up with taking some questions. So did you know when you place a child in a school, you may have the expectation that it can serve them for the long term, but circumstances can change. We discussed this. We talked about family circumstances changing, school circumstances changing, and we talked about maybe something changes in the middle of the year. Maybe you waited out till the end of the year. All of these happen often, and it should not be something that you are afraid to do. Public schools by law are required to provide services to your child, even if your child is attending a private school. So that's something we help families with a lot. Did you know that admissions directors—
I just wanted to chime in there. This also applies to homeschool. If your children are homeschooled, not just a private school, the right to the public school is there as well. But what I have found is that they're not always educated about what the expectations are. So we've heard of homeschoolers, families calling the public school, asking about resources or various things and basically being told no. Of course, when it was escalated up to a higher level, then they got a different answer. Yes. But just be aware if you fall into that category of homeschool.
Yeah, excellent point. And to your other point, it takes persistence and it takes asking the right questions. Absolutely. So another did you know is that admissions directors at private schools work together cooperatively to suggest other schools if their school does not work out for a student. So we often tell families if a school says no to your child, say thank you. You don't want to be in a place that does not think that they can serve your child. So, but the admissions directors talk and they may know, hey, this grade that I have coming in, it's not going to work for your child with this grouping. But I talked to my friend and their grouping sounds a lot better and they have space. That's where our connections with admissions directors come in really helpful. They're pretty open and transparent with us, which makes it really nice, especially for those middle of the year changes or late applications, to really figure out, is this going to work? And then finally, an educational consultant can be an asset to the team of professionals who serve your child. So, it's finding the school, but it's also making sure that what what your child is getting at their school is right for them, and working with their therapists, working with the parents, working with the teachers, the administration. It's a team effort, and we're just a part of that team.
So we actually have a question in the chat box. Could you talk about alternative and inclusive schools? Are there neurotypical kids in inclusive schools? Could you name some names of inclusive schools? Are there some for mild intellectual disability or mild ASD?
You know, I think the truth is that there are neuroatypical children in almost every school, and some just deal with that better and offer, you know, more assistance and more individualization than others. If a school says they don't have any children with any of those issues, they're deluding themselves, because there are a lot of kids for whom these more academic programs are really appropriate. They just need the right kind of support. So I don't know that there. Julie, can you mention any school that you would call an inclusive school in particular?
So I think that the populations of the schools change so often. And it's a question I think Dede and I would like to get back to you with, if you want to reach out to us. It's ever changing. And so to tell you what's in that school space right now, I wouldn't be giving the correct information without confirming it with the schools.
I think a lot of the families that we talk to on a regular basis, they have kids that are kind of in that middle ground, right? They might be ADHD or high functioning autism. They may actually have a really high IQ, might not have an intellectual disability, but they have other shortcomings that make things awkward or not a good fit. But it seems in the greater Houston area that fit of that school for that child that I just described is hard. So we have ones that are very specifically geared towards, severe intellectual disability or low functioning autism or any number of the other. I mean, we could throw out all these other ones. But it seems like for our kids that are in that middle ground, they truly need some help, but they're not severe. Where do people go for help on that? I mean, how do you get help for that?
It's really a trend right now, I think, in a lot of the private schools to offer some assistance for children that fit in that category, because they want them in the school. So they're inclusive in terms of the kids are they're grouped with the neurotypical kids in the regular classroom, but they have resources within the school, or they bring in resources to address the special learning needs that some students have. The reason for that is just what I was saying, that, especially in schools, say they take a child at age 3, and by age 8, they now know a lot more about how that child learns than they did when they took them at age 3. Most schools are not trying to weed out children who have special needs. They're trying to meet them. And as we're getting better and better over the years at identifying those needs, the schools are also, getting better and better at being able to have the programming that works for those kids.
And I think some of the challenges is like the stigmatism that, kind of that comes with this for our kids that do have disabilities that are higher functioning, being categorized into lower functioning or things like that, or feeling that this is what you think about me. So I think that there's some of that is hard. It's hard for the student. So it's not just about the parents finding that right fit. It's for the student believing in their heart of hearts that they belong where they are. And so I think that is definitely hard as well. We have another question. Says, what kind of services are public schools required to provide by law to students that are homeschooled or private schooled? Is it limited to therapy services, or are there other kinds of services that they're required to provide? And by the way, is there a website that somebody could look this up? Like, so if they wanted to know exactly what that, what they have to provide is, where do they find that at?
That's a good question. We will, I think I would have to find a website that really has all that information. But the special education departments in each school district can address what kind of services that they provide. Definitely the therapies, the speech therapy, OT, PT, some counseling, behavioral and emotional counseling is available. But and it depends on the age, because at young ages, even infancy to kindergarten age, those children can get direct services from the public school without having to be enrolled in a public school.
One website that I think may be helpful, some of the families may have heard of this before, it's called rightslaw.com. It's basically a special education law and advocacy. So if you haven't checked that out, I will put it in the chat box, but it's rightslaw.com. I would suggest, I've heard him speak in Houston before, very, very dynamic, very powerful story he himself has. So you may be able to find a lot of information on that website, and I'll put that in the chat box right now.
That's great. I'm also a parent of a grown son who had some special needs as he was going through school. And so I've been on both sides of the table. And I think, it helps to have that perspective when we deal with families. But, at least I have a positive story to tell about getting my child through his early years. And we did a lot of searching too for the right program for him. Are we ready for the next slide? Do we have any more questions?
It looked like another question came in the chat box that was really helpful. Allison, do you want me to go ahead and take it, or did you want to move on?
Yeah, no, sure. Please go ahead and take it. Okay,
so I see it says, after the last webinar on private school options, I was wondering, wouldn't our son be missing out on inclusivity? If he moved from a public to a private school. Ooh. As educational consultants, I am sure there is a balance that you consider and recommend. What are your thoughts on this? The thoughts I'm going to give are, private schools can be very inclusive. Every private school isn't therapeutic. And then another example I wanted to give from earlier is a student that may be accepted 1 year into a school, and then we could have a student the next year applying with the exact same profile, and that grouping wouldn't be right for them. So it really depends year to year, like we've said, and what you're looking for. But I don't think that private takes away from the inclusivity that you're asking about. Dede, do you have anything to add to that?
Just that I think when we work with families, if they are interested in private school, we also really push for them to look at their public school options. For a lot of reasons, and financial reasons are, sometimes at the top of that list, but also just the mix of kids that are in any particular school. So we like for families to know both their private and their public school options.
Yeah, private does not mean that it's, all students with the same types of learning disabilities or abilities. You may be talking more about the therapeutic schools, and even sometimes there's plenty of differences that students are not missing out on. Or maybe it's a place you go to work on something for a couple of years, and then you integrate back into a mainstream environment. So there's a lot of different options.
One thing, I've done a lot of research in the past for my own kids on this, and I think there's a couple of takeaways, and I'm not like pro homeschool, pro private school, pro public school. I mean, I as you guys are saying, I think it's about the fit for the individual family. But what I would say is, in my own research and researching the various school options in the area, just because it's expensive does not necessarily mean that it is better. I have seen really expensive private schools using curriculum that's 15 years old. I've seen really expensive private schools where their teachers aren't certified. So I think I to what you guys do, to give credit to what you guys do. I'm an advocate. That's what I do. I eat, sleep, and breathe this kind of stuff. So I kind of get in the weeds on this kind of stuff. But if you don't have the time to get in the weeds with this stuff, and this kind of stuff matters to you, whether the school is accredited or not accredited, whether the teachers are certified or not certified, whether they're using Christian curriculum or not Christian, or outdated curriculum because the school, even though it's a private school and they charge a lot of tuition, they're basically broke, so they haven't been updating their stuff. Those are all things that are really real things. And it doesn't matter if you're in Houston or if you're in Dallas or if you're in Arizona, it's basically the same lay of the land. So when you're really doing your research, if you want to do it yourself, there's a lot of research that goes into it. But when you're working directly with a consultant, they're the ones that are knowing these things and being able to educate you on this, so that way you can make an informed decision. So it takes a lot of time. It's tours. It's the parent Facebook groups where you're asking other parents who have students in these schools, good, bad, and indifferent experiences and things like that. And it takes a lot of time. So if this is something that's very important to you and you don't have the time, I would say, from that perspective, that's where the consultant comes into play, which comes to a question that wasn't asked. And I'm shocked by all of the participants today that did not ask this question. But how much do you guys charge? If I wanted to hire you and I needed help, how does this pricing work with you guys? Are there options? Can you explain that to the group?
Yeah, I do see it in the chat box. It got asked and we're ready to give it to you. Yeah, it was a 3-part question and it snuck in there in the middle. So yeah, we have 2 different packages. We have our full service package, which is $1,850, and we have our basic package, which is $850. We do give discounts for siblings. We have worked with families to merge the packages. We have hourly rates. It really depends on your needs and how much handholding you need, or what the circumstances are, or what kind of work we'll be doing for you. And we do offer a free 30-minute consultation to help guide you towards what would be best for you and your family.
That's wonderful. So it is affordable. I've seen college consultants, when we start looking at college consultants, oh my gosh, you could drop 20 grand on that, seriously. Yeah. And then your kid goes to a school for a semester and drops out or something. But anyway, but so I'm glad to hear that your services are affordable for someone that wants to partner with you. And it's like, I'm kind of just this believer of, I want to be really good at what I'm good at, and I want to partner with other people on what they're really good at for the best outcomes. And, I can think of stories in the past of where I was going to do something myself, like paint or something in my house. It was a disaster. Then I ended up hiring the professional, and it was actually would have been a lot cheaper if I would have just hired the professional to begin with to kind of sort some of those things out. So I guess I am a firm believer in that for sure. So, so what I would like to say is, Dede and Julie, I am so thankful that you guys have taken the time, and also to Meredith too. Meredith is behind the scenes at Consolidated Planning Group, and she's a little bit awesome. And she is, if you enjoy the webinars at Consolidated Planning Group, you can thank Meredith for all of that. It's all Meredith. It is all Meredith. So definitely thank you for that. So Meredith came into contact with these 2 fine ladies and said, hey, I really think that we need this topic because we know that we've got families that we're talking to every week. And you know what? School and educational issues in school, it just comes up. It's never ending on the many things as families on this journey are thinking about. This is always on the list, always. And so I'm just really glad to know that your company exists and that there are affordable options for families that if they do want to partner with somebody to help navigate this, that you guys are there. So thank you for that. So
Allison, if we just could wrap up on one thought, because I know there were also some questions that weren't answered. So if you want to reach out to us via email or phone or our website, we have a contact form there. So we'd be happy to answer those for you. But thank you so much for having us. We really
And going back to our dating analogy, just as you experience when you're looking for a partner, there's a large emotional component, obviously, to choosing a school. And we encourage parents always to listen to their gut instincts when they make that ultimate choice. And we, having been there ourselves, we know how that feels.
I think that's true. And I think the parents that are here today are probably here because they've got that gut thing going on. So they want to learn more and figure out, the next. I think we're, again, that relentless pursuit of next, of, what do I do now? So for sure. Well, if you guys have joined us in the past, these are some things that should be on your special needs planning radar. I'm not going to go in deep and wide with these. All of these topics, they do live on our YouTube channel, so if you've missed them, you can go back and listen to them. We do put out a monthly email. Don't worry, we are way too busy to spam anybody, but a monthly email will go out with all of our webinars for the entire month. So if you want to sign up for them, the sign-ups will be in that email, so for ongoing webinars and topics. This is our team. There's Meredith right here, the hero of the day that we've been talking about. And I always just like to share our team because I often do these webinars, and but I am empowered by an awesome team behind me as well. So as always, our consultations are always free. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel and our Facebook page for additional events or talks that might be relevant to you and your journey. It could be with Consolidated Planning Group or any number of the partners that that we work with in the special needs community. So you can just check it out there. So thanks so much, everyone, for taking your time to be with us today. We ended up a little bit early. We got the questions answered and ended up a little bit early. So thank you again, ladies, for being here. And thank you, everyone, for joining this webinar today.
Thank you.
Have a good one.
Bye, everybody.